a monk in Glenstal Abbey for the last 56 years. That is to say, in the school, first of all, as a boy, and then when I was 20 as a monk. My mother was American and she came to Ireland to study at Trinity College, Dublin. She went for a weekend to a farm in County Limerick, which is near here, and my father fell in love with her as he saw her getting out of the car. He knew she was only staying for the weekend, so he plucked up his courage and he asked her to marry him. And she said, "I know absolutely nothing about you." And he said, "Well, you know as much about me now as you're ever going to know, so you better make up your mind." And they both agreed when they were 70 that he was right. So I was born in a stud farm in County Limerick, about 40 kilometres away from this abbey. It was a beautiful place, and just behind it, at the very edge of our land, there was a mountain, Knockfearna, which means the Hill of Truth. And as I never went to school until I was 9, because my mother disapproved of education until the child wanted to go to school, I spent most of the time with my sister riding up to this mountain, Knockfearna. And from the age at least of 9, I can't remember back further than that, I was aware of God on this mountain, almost as if he or God was a timid animal at the other side of a hedge, or like an oversized pixie, or some big, huge presence that was finding it difficult to have friends. And anyway, I developed a relationship with this presence and have all my life been aware of it in exactly that same way. Even when I went to school first, I would have been about 10 years of age. There was a priest who was giving us a retreat. He was quite a famous person in his day, called Father Gabriel Harty, and he was giving a retreat to the boys in the school where I was. And during the first lecture, I noticed that nobody was listening to him at all. So after the first lecture, I went to him and I said, "These people aren't listening to you at all. And if you let me give the next talk, I'll tell them what God is all about." And this, I was 10 at the time. And he was very sweet and said to me, "Well, my next lecture," he said, "is going to be on Lourdes, and I'm going to be showing slides, and you can put the slides into the projector." So he missed his great opportunity. And then I came to school here in Glenstal. And the purpose of the school at that time, I imagine, was to kind of get monks to join. So if the boys in the school were quiet and well behaved, they were invited to come and become monks here. And others who were more boisterous were sent to be missionaries. And the choice was the Columban Fathers in Navan mostly. So in the class that I was in when I left, there were 13 boys altogether, and 3 joined the monastery here, and 2 others became Columban missionaries. When I was in school, the first day that I came here to school, I met Rufus Halley, who told me that he was going to be a missionary, and he was later on murdered in the Philippines. So in other words, it was regarded as normal in those days that you would have a vocation. And the monks here persuaded me that my search for God, which was to do with my meeting on that mountainside, would be best carried out here in Glenstal Abbey. And they were very, very good to me. I did studies of philosophy and theology in Paris, and every opportunity was given to me. I did a doctorate in the philosophy of education. So there was no attempt whatever to change my views or to anyway influence my search. And this has been a wonderful place in which to carry it out. But I did not want to be a priest. I wanted to be a monk and to search for God in the way that I felt was appropriate, was necessary for me to find out who was this person that I had met so young and had kept up this constant relationship with. And then I decided that I would write a book, and that everybody in the country and indeed in the whole world would have no problem anymore, because they'd all read the book and they'd know what it was all about. And I spent 16 years trying to get this book published, and nobody would look at it. They said, nobody wants to read that kind of nonsense. And eventually, in 1999, I published a book which was called Kissing the Dark. And it was about connecting with the unconscious. And for whatever reason, it became a bestseller in Ireland. And the fact is, if you get a bestseller, then anything else you publish will be accepted, whether they're on cactus plants or on whatever. So I then had so much material, having spent 16 years collecting it, that I produced more or less a book every few years, and all the time trying to square this relationship with God that I had since I was a child with what was taught to me about theology, and which was proposed as the Roman Catholic view of Christianity. So then, for whatever reason, I was elected Abbot of Glenstal. Now, that was a big surprise to me and to the community who elected me, because you don't know who's going to be even proposed. It's not as if everybody goes out campaigning. You just choose between the 30 people who are in the room, and I was chosen as abbot. And that caused quite an amount of worry in the nation, and so much so that the RTE produced a program, Would You Believe, explaining that the new Abbot of Glenstal was the mad monk from the Midwest. And Gay Byrne then did some interviews with me, mostly trying to find out whether I believed in transubstantiation and the Immaculate Conception, so that the Abbot of Glenstal could be shown to be kosher. Now, the difficulty was that Rome said I couldn't be the Abbot of Glenstal Abbey in Maru unless I was ordained a priest. So this was a complication, but I felt that having been elected, I followed the Spirit to the best I could in my life. And it seemed to me that at the age of 64, this was a call to me to bring the two things together, my connection with God and the priesthood of the Catholic Church. So I was ordained on the 8th of December in 2008. Now, when I joined the monastery here, my father, there was a beautiful big Turkish oak in front of our house, and he brought a sapling from that oak tree to Glenstal, and he planted it when I made profession in 1965. And it was growing away steadily. And strangely enough, the original oak, which was in front of our house, was felled in a storm on the day I was ordained, and it collapsed. And the man who's now owned our farm, his farm manager made a bowl which he gave me, which was made out of the felled oak, and I keep it here in my room. And in the meantime, the oak tree that my father planted has become quite a big and sturdy tree. So I do feel that the transplantation has taken place, which means that I now am able to square what I have learnt in theology about the Blessed Trinity and the God that I met when I was a young child on that mountain called Knockfearna. So that has been a great privilege for me, as it were. The thing you're asked when you join a monastery, there's only one question, and that is, do you really, truly seek God? And I will say quite clearly that that has been my interest and my passion all my life. But I had to remain faithful to the God that I met when I was a very young child. And it has been a huge privilege to conduct that search in this very, very beautiful place, in this very benign community. And I will say without reservation that I have had here and in this search a very wonderful life.